All right, Beyonders, welcome back to Tabletop and Beyond. This is an awesome show that we're going to have today. It is the 2024 NOVA Open Warcry GT breakdown and list review. Hold on one second. It says 2023. That's not right. We're going to start that again. Move from studio. Okay. Present slides. Google Slides. All right, here we go. Start this again. All right, Beyonders, welcome back to Tabletop and Beyond. This is a winning Warcry episode. Super happy to be located in the bunker basement where I will be doing a breakdown and list review of all of the lists for the 2024 Warcry GT things. We're doing it a little bit different today because, as some of you may know, I am as busy as a bumblebee right now in my personal life, and I had a difficult time finding a moment where I could sit down with Dan to review some of these lists with him together. So what he did is he took a couple of the lists, 5 out of the 24 that we have right now, and he did a little side review. So what's going to happen is we're going to break down all the lists today. He took 5 of them, and we're going to stitch them in. We're going to put them in. So you're going to see me cut to him as we go through. I'll let you know. And one thing that you will notice is that he'll say, oh, my last video, but it's going to be kind of in the middle just with the way I've arranged it. And that's on me, not on Dan. That's just him recording stuff. So, but I'm really excited. I'm really excited to talk about this. It is 1:05 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on August 28th. So it's late or early, depending on how you want to see it. But really, the thing that matters is we are 1 day away from the NOVA Open Warcry GT, and I'm super excited. I'm watching everybody in the Discord jump into the chat saying, hey, I'm going to be getting there at 5. I'm riding up the train. I got all my stuff packed up. It's just amping me up. So I wanted to make this video so that we could get it out and let people just dive in and check out the list and see what they got coming up for them. So without further ado, let me break it down for you. So here we are. The NOVA Open 2024 Warcry GT breakdown and list review brought to you by Tabletop and Beyond. Here it is. Here's the 2024 NOVA Open meta, really. With the breakdown of alliances, it's very interesting what we have. 33% with 8 factions is Chaos. 33% with 8 factions is Order. There's 6 factions that are Destruction, and only 2 factions, 8.3%, that are Death. So, we've got, again, 33% with Chaos and Order, 25% with Destruction, 8.3% with Death. Very interesting to me. So, breaking that down even a little bit further, in Chaos, we have Blades of Khorne, Chaos Legionnaires, Slaanesh Silberites, Horns of Hashut, Iron Golem, Skaven, and 2 factions of Slaves to Darkness. A lot of variety there. In the Sentinels of Order, we have Caradron Overlords, Lumineth, Stormcast Eternals Quester Soulsworn, Stormcast Eternals Thunderstrike, Sylvaneth, and Wildercore Hunters, all with 1 each. And then the Vulcan Flameseekers, we have 2 war bands with the Vulcan Flameseekers. So again, very similar to Chaos, where we've got 8 war bands, but only 2 of them have doubles, basically, right? That we have 2 war bands of the same faction. So lots of variety there. In the Harbingers of Destruction, this is where we buck the trend a little bit. We've got 6 total war bands in the Harbingers of Destruction. One of them is Gloomspite Gitz. we have 3 Iron Jaws and 2 Cruel Boys. Very interesting. And that'll be very interesting as I show you sort of what the numbers were last year and how they compare. But getting to the Bringers of Death, we only have 2, which are the Soul Blight Gravelords. So let me show you what they were last year, because I thought that this was a very interesting year-to-year comparison and what a difference a year makes. I think having Divine Blessings, which we didn't, it came out shortly before the Nova Open last year, to the point where we decided not to allow them because they really hadn't been tested. We weren't sure if it was going to break the list building apparatus. Turns out Divine Blessings is a very interesting addition, and they are here this year, as well as we got the battle traits this year, which we are allowing into the tournament. And the battle traits are showing up here, I think, a little bit, and we'll see that as we kind of go through the list. But I want to show you this. So last year we had a lot of parity across the board. I mean, Chaos had 6 at 24%. Order had 7 at 28%. Destruction had 8 at 32%. And Death had 16%. So Destruction was kind of the big guy on the block, with Order and Chaos kind of right behind him. And Death was a little bit light. What's interesting, I think, if you look at it, again, there was a lot of different factions. We did have 2 Caradron Overlords last year, where we only have 1 this year. We had 2 Seraphon last year. We have none this year. We had 2 Horns of Hashut, and we only have 1 this year. And what's interesting is we had 3 Bone Splitters factions last year, and this year we have no Bone Splitters, but we have 3 Iron Jaws. There were no Iron Jaws last year, and I attribute that completely to the battle traits that it is. Iron Jaw's got an insane battle trait that they can use, and I think it is enough that it's telling people go ahead and take them, despite them being a little slow and maybe a little clunky sometimes. The battle trait really helps them. So it's interesting to see how the game has shifted a little bit. As far as Bringers of Death, last year we only had 1 Soulblight Gravelord. This year we have 2, but we don't have anybody else. I'm surprised. Nighthaunt did get a little bit of a boost, but I don't think enough to where it's competitive in this type of format, in type of tournament. I think it was Kyle last year that played Royal Beast Flayers. I could be wrong about that because I don't have it in front of me. But this year he's playing Soulblight Gravelord. So yeah, we just I'm a little surprised that maybe we don't see some Flesh Eater courts or I mean, Soulblight makes sense, but I'm surprised that we only have 2 factions from Death. So maybe we need to get a little bit more bespoke in here. All right, let's break it down. We're hitting the Chaos list right now. So again, you'll hear me sort of turn it over to Dan and we'll stitch them in. But let's start with the Agents of Chaos lists. The first up that we have is Kurt Stein with the Blades of Corn. He's got a Demolisher with Flame Hurler, so he's bringing in that ally from the Horns of Hashut. He's got a Slaughter Priest, a Blood Reaver, 2 Blood Reavers with Reaver Blades, a Mighty Skull Crusher with the Ensorcelled Axe. Again, 2 Blood Reavers in the hammer with them, and then you have a Korgorath, and then 2 Blood Reavers with River Blades. So I like this list with the sense that you've got 3 threats there. I mean, with the Flame Hurler, the Skull Crusher can do some work, and Korgorath can be a bit of a beast. So we'll just kind of see if they can stand up to some of the more like heavy damage that's out there, and if they can kind of get their big pieces where they need to be. He's got movement with the Skull Crusher. I think that's great. But will the terrain maybe make it a little bit difficult for him to get around or get to where he needs to? So, that's always the risky thing with mounts, especially like if you're playing a treasure mission. So we'll see how that goes. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what he does. That Flame Hurler, if he can protect it with those Blood Reavers and Slaughter Priests, could cause a lot of problems for some folks out there. All right, moving on to Evan Baker, Chaos Legionnaires. He's got a Decuriarch, Mutador, a Hornhelm with Steelbite Axe, Horn Shield with Mace, Horn Shield with Sword, Hornhelm with Steelbite Axe, Hornhelm with Dark Iron Mace, and a Horn Shield with Axe. So this is basically a one-box army here. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I think the running joke that I have is the Mutador, which is sort of like the goat man with the long spear. For me, he's always like the one that dies first. I've actually never hit anybody with the Mutador, even though I've played this faction several times. It seems like he just dies.
I want to talk about Pete Mercencavage. This is a very sweet list. Now, for those who have been kind of following Warcry in the competitive scene, they know that Vexmore plus either Slaves to Darkness or Slaanesh Sybarites have kind of turned into one of the boogeyman kind of lists in the metagame. And here is Pete running his take on it with a Lord of Pain, a Lord of Hubris, which is a really fun little fighter. He's actually plussed it with toughness, given it +1 toughness to make it a little bit more survivable, which I really love, because Lord of Hubris, of course, gives away free attacks to the opponent in order to get absolutely silly, like 6/6/2/6 attacks for himself, which can just like absolutely level any kind of chaff or even kind of mid-sized fighters, which is awesome. Then there's Vexmore, then there's Slake Slash. These are all fighters who desperately need doubles in order to survive, but that's okay. When you have an all doubles warband, I actually really like playing that way because any triple you just turned into a quad. Rampaging is great. The Lord of Pain is amazing at rampaging. And then when you just don't roll any triples, you don't roll a rampage, you're just happy to just make more and more and more doubles. You don't have to spend your wild dice to kind of upgrade anything, which means it can be really easy to get like 3 doubles in a turn, which is really great and lets you run a list like this just really smoothly and really easily. Then the Blissbrew Homunculi, they don't do a ton, they just like run around, and that's totally fine. That's something you're going to need on a bunch of these missions. For example, Rising Dread, you need to get that hammer contributing early. Lightning Raid, you start so far away from the center. So having these fast Blissbrew Homunculi is really, really nice. We don't know what Pete's like deployment groups are, but that's okay. I think this list is going to succeed no matter what. We've seen lists like this dominate in a whole bunch of different settings, and so it's nice. One thing I've been kind of bugging Pete to try is to play the broken thing. I think Pete has gotten a lot of fun and a lot of happiness out of kind of playing a little bit off-kilter stuff a lot, and now he's just like going pure meta, pure like the thing everyone's scared of already, which is great. I think Pete's probably my pick to win the tournament here, because I just think that seeing him play a sort of more meta list is really exciting for me.
All right, thank you, Dan. Right, we are going to look at James Rodriguez, Horns of Hashut. He's got a Demolisher with Flame Hurler, so nice one. He's got 2 Shatterers in his dagger. We got a Ruinator Alpha with Heavy Flail, Chaos Sorcerer Lord as an ally, another Shatterer there. And then he has Vexmore, Demolisher with Flame Hurler, and a Shatterer. So this might be a kind of a nasty list here. With the 2 Flame Hurlers did pretty well last year. They had some like really good success with Javi playing that. He took it to, I think, 4th place is where he ended up with the double Flame Hurlers. And actually, he may have even taken 3rd or 4th place last year with the double Flame Hurlers. But you throw in Vexmore here and add a little bit of ferocity through the blessings. I think that you've got an interesting combination here where you've got some real big threats on the table for sure. One thing that I'm curious about is I haven't really seen the Chaos Sorcerer Lord out here. So I'm looking him up right now just to kind of see his abilities. Chaos Sorcerer Lord. Chaos Lord. All right, Chaos Sorcerer Lord. He's got his blast attack, right? 3 to 7 inches, 2 attacks, 3/6 damage. Strength 3 on that. It's not terrible. 150 points for 22 wounds, movement 4. Yeah, it's okay. He has access to the demonic power. Pick a visible friendly fighter within 8 inches of the fire. Till the end of this battle, add 1 to the strength and attacks characteristics of the next melee attack. All right, so I think he's taking him for that demonic power. That's really what the Chaos Sorcerer Lord is there for. And throw an extra attack and strength on that Ruinator Alpha with the heavy flail, and I think that you've got a little bit of oomph there with it, because the Ruinator Alpha himself, he has 3 attacks, strength 4, 2/5 damage, but if you give him 4 attacks at strength 5, I mean, he's hitting pretty good. So that's an interesting combination, and he gave the Ruinator Alpha some extra health, so at 24 health. I like it. I'm very curious to see how this does. I think it's going to this list will surprise a lot of people. All right, Gabriel Gonzalez with the Iron Golems. Dan, we are going to have you take a look at this because you were very interested in it. So take it away.
And I want to do a quick hit on Gabriel G's list, Gabriel Gonzalez's list for Iron Golems. I've never met Gabriel, but I wish him the best of luck because I think this is really cool. One of the first things I wanted to try when the MetaWatch hit was seeing if Vexmore on his own with Vashtis, of course, because she's amazing too, to see if the two of them could save various low tier, not very powerful warbands. Now, Iron Golems aren't terrible by any means, but they're not one of the best out there. And so the question here is whether Vexmore and Vashtis can come in and help Iron Golems to the top. And I really hope they do. I hope Gabriel does really well because I find this list really exciting. Now, I do think I'd be worried about playing in Rising Dread with this list. I don't think Vashtis plus a Legionary can steal one of the contested objectives as the dagger. It's going to really ask that Ogre Breacher to do a ton of work. But if Gabriel can get past that mission, oh my god, I think he's set up so well for Pillager's Loot and Lightning Raid. Pillager's Loot is going to have a Dominar and a Vexmore right in the center of the board fighting for that center objective. That's the one that tends to matter the most, and it's just going to be an incredible amount of hitting power right there. Your shield, that Ogre Breacher, is going to be really well set up to just like go run down that dagger. The Armator is going to have a tough time getting there, but that's okay. And I don't hate the Armator in the shield here because of if you can kind of run it up in round 1 to the contested objective in Rising Dread, you can kind of have your Armator be like kind of a holding piece a little bit. It's got 15 wounds. It's got a solid attack profile. It can maybe like hold the opponent's dagger in place to it can something that can happen sometimes is you can get that contested objective taken from you and then you can take it back, and that might be something that he might be able to do with that Armator there. And then of course the hammer is also just having fighting power in it. It's so important for Lightning Raid. Also, he's putting Vexmore where it can go in and affect the battlefield the soonest in Lightning Raid, which is really nice. So if Gabriel can get out of Rising Dread unscathed, I think he's going to be in a really good spot for Pillager's Loot and Lightning Raid, which is exciting. I really hope he does well. I like Iron Golems. I've got them painted. They're one of the first things I ever painted. I really like that warband, and I hope it sees success, and I hope Gabriel wins a ton of games because this is a really sweet list.
Thank you, Dan. We're also going to let Dan take the next list for Skaven. So jump right in, my friend. Dan, I think has a secret affinity for Skaven, so I think he was very excited to look at this one.
The second list that I really love here is from Gray Rostron, and Gray decided to take Skaven. Now, this tournament will be played with battle traits, which is what makes me so excited for this list. Skaven's battle trait is incredibly powerful. Now, Gray only has one 70-point fighter. The point of the battle trait is that in the end of round 2 and 3, you can resurrect a a fighter that has died, as long as that fighter is 70 points or less. And so your 70-point fighters basically come back for free. Now, Gray only has one, which is Skritter. Skritter is very killable, though. Skritter is very fragile. So Gray is going to be trying to kind of fly Skitter around the board, forcing you to engage it, using him to like tie you down. Some of these missions are actually very friendly for that too. So, for example, Skritter can, in Pillager's Loot, run up to the opponent's shield and block them from being able to chase down your dagger. So you can have Skabic and your Storm Vermin kind of abscond with the treasures while Skitter just like runs up and just is really annoying. And then once they kill it, you can resurrect Skitter over in like the other side of the board, and then Skitter can actually glom onto their dagger so that it can't like run away, which is just like really funny if you can pull that off. So there's kind of cool stuff that you can do with kind of where Gray has put Skitter in the dagger. Here, it's, in Lightning Ray, it's going to be tough to kind of close, but once you do it, there's just a lot of fights here going on in the center. And then if you can get Skritter dead, all of a sudden Skritter can come in and challenge the opponent's home objective, which is kind of cool. So a lot of really neat little tricks that Gray can try to pull off there. The other thing that Gray went for that I think is really cool, and cool to see multiple people coming up with this. Of course, if you heard my first kind of blurb about Kaler's list, you know that I'm pretty enthused about any sort of shooter in the shield here in this mission pack. And so having the Storm Fiend with rattling cannons, it's nice to see kind of two people kind of figuring that out and kind of going with the same idea. The Storm Fiend with rattling cannons is funny because it is really good at shooting stuff down, which is great. But it's also one of those where sometimes you actually don't want to close the distance with the Storm Fiend because it's still got 3 attacks hitting for 4 and 8. I'm pretty sure the strength isn't that impressive, but it's still like if you come after it and then it just like onslaughts and rolls okay, you could just be completely deleted off the board. Then in the hammer, Gray's got a Storm Fiend with Doomflare Gauntlets. That thing is ridiculous. It rolls a bunch of attacks. It hits for 4 and 8. It's completely absurd. There isn't a single fighter in the game that the Storm Fiend with Doomflare Gauntlets isn't an existential threat to, and so that's just a really nice place to be. It's also pretty fast, which is nice, so you can't really like escape it with a treasure carrier very easily. These are very brawling missions. There are 2 objective missions here, yes, but both of them have incredibly powerful sort of catch-up mechanics for like very fighty warbands. So I don't think there's a ton of pressure on you to have a bajillion fighters in your warband. And so that's going to help Gray out because Gray is going to still have numbers late in the game because he's bringing back these Skritters. And he's also going to hopefully be able to get a lot of killing power out of that Storm Fiend and the one with the rattling cannons too. Skabic also is kind of a fun choice here because all 3 of these do have objectives. Yes, Pillager's Loot doesn't score off the objectives, and the objectives do eventually disappear, but Skabic is still able to go and do some kind of cheeky damage on all 3 of these, which is really nice. Skabic, for those who don't know, has an ability to kind of project damage onto everything around an objective, which is really nice. He just sort of like taints the objective, or it's some sort of like, he's a pestilence model, right? So it's some sort of Nurgle themed grossness. But I think that's really cool. I'm really excited to see this. Personally, when I brew Skaven, I usually make 2 70-point fighters, but here I'm pretty interested in kind of the balance of compromises that Gray kind of went in here doing, because there's kind of a lot that's sort of clearly placed here to have these missions in mind, right? The need for staying power and the need to not get knocked off the board quickly, like how much that punishes you in Rising Dread and Lightning Raid, is evident here by having the Storm Vermins with the shields. Also, they're very good for Pillager's Loot because they can still move 4 even with a treasure, and then they've got that toughness 5, which can be so important for keeping them alive. So I'm very interested to see how Gray does, and I think this is a really cool list. I think Skaven are generally being underplayed a little bit by a lot of competitive players, and so it's cool to see this happen.
All right, so thank you, Dan. All right, I am going to look at Dan Pomeroy's list next. Slaves to Darkness. He has an Ogoroid Theridon with Goron Falchion and Shield. He's got a Chaos Marauder with Flail in there. And then for the hammer, he's got Varangard with Ensorcelled Weapon, 2 Chaos Marauders with Barbarian Flails. The shield has a Myrmidon, Ogoroid Myrmidon, and a Chaos Marauder with Barbarian Flail again. Those flails at 60 points are great chaff here, right? So Dan obviously is looking for some. He's got 3 strong threats here with the Theridon and the Myrmidon and the Varangard. He's got some mobility with the Varangard. The thing is that he has 7 models in this, which isn't terrible. I think 7's probably like a good, benchmark of where you want to be. But with 7, 4 of them being chaff models, you really need to get your heavy hitters where you need them right away. So you have to be careful about other factions basically throwing speed bumps up in your way. Like places or factions like that have Shatterers or Skeletons or Arcanauts or something like that, where they're there and they're just there to get in the way and slow you down. Because obviously, like an Ogoroid or a Varangard, they could absolutely destroy your chaff models, no problem. But if you have enough of them and it takes 2 or 3 turns to get to where they need to be, the game is usually over by then. So that's what I'm interested to see in how he manages. Warren Connell also has Slaves to Darkness. The list is somewhat similar. It's very interesting. He has a Varangard with Demon Forge Blade. He has a Vexmore, Chaos Marauder with Flail. And the hammer, he's got an Ogoroid Theridon and 2 Chaos Marauders with Flail. And in the shield, he's got 2 Chaos Marauders with Flail. So the difference here is that Warren, instead of rolling with another Ogoroid Myrmidon, he decided to go with Vexmore and add another Marauder. So Warren has 8 models in his Slaves to Darkness faction, and he's got Vexmore rather than the Myrmidon. So I think that again, he's going to face some of the same issues that Dan Pomeroy is, which is, can you get your big bodies to where you need them to be when you need them to be there? And if so, then he's going to win some games. If not, if people can slow him down, by throwing bodies in the way, I think he'll struggle a little bit. But look, he's got some heavy hitting, just like with Dan Pomeroy. Like if something's in his way, big or small, it's gonna get demolished. So it'll be interesting to see how the different missions play out as we tried to balance them between objective and treasure and kill missions. So very excited to see how these 2 Slaves to Darkness factions work out. Hopefully they do well and they get their time in the sun before we get a reworking eventually, which I think we're probably due for with the Dark Oath faction that had come out for Slaves to Darkness earlier this year. So good luck, Dan, Warren, and all the rest of the Chaos list folks that we have. I'm super excited to see how your factions do. All right. Let's break it down into order. All right, Casey Van Camp is the only player that brought us a Caradron Overlords. KO, I think from the time of the last Nova Open, really had their time in the sun. That Fight for Profit was such a big boon that, they were dropping people and things into KO lists that really making it a super strong gun line. During the April FAQ that had come out this year, they were pretty much like nerfed with the fight for profit. I don't want to say nerfed because that kind of implies that it was made unusable. I think it was just brought down to reality. It's still a very good ability, but it's just not like over the top obscenely great that it was before. So Casey has decided to go with an errant quester with Grand Hammer. He has 2 Arcanaut Company privateers, one with a Sky Pike and one with a pistol and cutter. In his hammer, he has an engine rigger with rapid fire rivet gun and aethermatic saw. He also has a Sky Warden with vulcanizer pistol and Sky Pike. And he has an Arcanaut Admiral that has Might Blessing attached to it, a Grunstock Thunderer with Etheric Fumigator, Arcanaut, and an Arcanaut Company Privateer with Privateer Pistol and Cutter. So he has 9 here. Yes, 9 folks. And he's running a gun line. I mean, he's ready to shoot and not so scoot because they're not the fastest dwarves out there, but to shoot and kind of, blow people off of objectives and, just make life difficult with him. What I think is interesting, he does have a little bit of movement in that engine rigger with the rivet gun and aethermatic saw, and the errant quester with Grand Hammer gives him some options as well, where he can help move. It gives him some melee power that he needs. The Grand Hammer doesn't have the greatest of movement, but if it can get to where it needs to go, which you can kind of get it there, he'll have some oomph to help clear out areas around objectives or kill missions, etc. I think the Caradron Overloads will probably do better in kill missions, and they may struggle a little bit in the objective missions, just because I think they're going to have a hard time getting there. But the kill missions, I think they should be fine, and the treasure missions, with how kind of spread out and stuff it is, he's going to have to try to beat feet to get some of that treasure early on and then just kind of hunker down. Otherwise, if he has to chase guys, he's going to struggle, I think, a little bit on the the Pillagers mission that we have. All right, so my next one is Thomas Arthur, who has the Luminous Realm Lords. I'm really kind of interested to see this one. I've never actually seen or played against Luminous Realm Lords. I haven't really seen them at the tables. I think that they are an underrated faction, just because you don't see, underrated might not be the right word. They might be a meta breaker in the sense that nobody is used to playing against them. So if Thomas has a good plan on how to use these, I think that he will definitely surprise some people. Now, Thomas is a decent player. He showed up at Adepticon last year, did really well. Showed up at the Nova Open last year, did pretty well. So, Thomas can play. I'm sure that he's play tested this list. He has 3 Venari Arlen Wardens, and they have all been blessed with Fortitude in his dagger. 3 more Venari Arlen Wardens, and they've all been blessed with Fortitude in his hammer. And then he has a Hurricane Wind Mage that's been blessed by Might, an Arliss Stone Mage that has been blessed by Resilience, and then a Sonari Lore Seeker that has been blessed by Might as well. So every single one of his fighters has received a blessing, which is kind of crazy because if you add it up, it is 135 points that he has spent on blessings, which, if you're looking at just the Wardens, 135 points buys you 2 more fighters. So granted, he has 9 right now. He could have had 11, but he has 9 right now. So what does the Warden do? Like, what are you really looking for, right? The Warden has a 3-inch range, 3 attacks, strength 3, 1/4 damage. It does have a 5-inch move, so it's going to get to places where you need it to get to. Toughness 4, and because of all the fortitude on it, it has 12 wounds. So kind of interesting. You've got some cheap-ish chaff. It takes you to 80 points, 12 wounds with a 4. Yeah, I mean, they're comparable to me to some more boys. Is that right? No, not the more boys. They're comparable to the Savage Oryx, right? The Savage Boys, where they were 80 points. They had 15 wounds or 14 wounds, something like 14, 15 wounds, but they were only toughness 3. So he has a couple less wounds, but an extra point of toughness. So I see it as very comparable, where with the blessings at 80 points, they are acting almost like the Bone Splitters Savage Oryx here. Now, the 1-4 damage, that concerns me with Wet Noodles, but he's got the Wind Mage to make it up and the Stone Mage. So let's look at these real quick, because I'm going to be honest, the Luminous Realm Lords, like, I haven't really done a deep dive in here. So the Hurricane Wind Mage, you're really taking that for the blast there. If you're trying to do damage, 2 attacks, strength 3, 3/6 damage. That's a 3 to 7 range. But you've got movement with this, right? Like, you can use it to like disengage. It flies. It's got a movement of 12 inches. I mean, this thing's like flying all over the board where you need it, right? And it has access to the leader abilities, which gets you... Yeah. It's all right. And then the Stone Mage, again, is another sorcerer. It has a lot of the same... Well, it doesn't have the same abilities, obviously. But it can... it's got a quad that can do D3 damages to all visible fighters within 6 inches of it. And then it halves the movement characteristic of all fighters while they make a move within 6 inches. Problem is that's a quad. So, you know how we feel about kind of planning your army around a quad. I hope Arthur hasn't said like, hey, this quad's great, like we should plan around it, because it's like, I don't know about you guys, but whenever I need a quad, I never get it. And he has the Sonari Lore Seeker, which is also a wizard. So she has that same blast. And she has an interesting ability where she has this like disappearing act thing. A fighter can only use this ability if there's no other friendly fighters within 6 inches of this fighter. Oh, this fighter makes a bonus move action. Sorry, not a disappearing act. It basically a bonus. It's a double that if she's by herself, she can make a move. So I think Thomas here is really going for... this is a control list, right? He is trying to move the Venari Orlans around, and with their Shining Company ability with the Wardens, they can subtract 1 from the attack's characteristics of attack actions made by enemy fighters while they target a fighter within 1 inch of this. So if, like, they're kind of like in a shield wall, they subtract 1 from the attack's characteristics. So I think he's hoping that giving them a little bit more health, subtracting attack actions, kind of making that shield wall, and then having the wizards blast from over the top. That's the way that they're going to go. And he can move like models around. So we'll see how it goes. I'm very interested to see this. Like I said, I've never seen it on the field before. All right, next list is Stormcast Eternal, Quester Soulsworn. This looks like it's straight out of the box here. We got a Soulsworn, Knight Relictor, Errant Quester Duelist with Twin Blades and the Dagger, Errant Quester with Grand Blade, Errant Quester with Grand Hammer and the Hammer, and Errant Quester with Grand Spear and a Quester Prime. So, this will be interesting to see how it does. I think that, some of the Quest for Soulsworn are really good, and some of them are okay. And as a whole, I don't know if they've got all the tools that they need to deal with some of the bigger threats that are out there on the board. Just because I know they've got the movement piece a little bit, and there's some that can kind of teleport. There's some that, the reaction, you can kind of move someone if somebody died. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how a straight Quest or Soulsworn list is used. A lot of these people, like you'll see errant questers with the Grand Hammer in other ones, or sometimes the Knight Relictor. Well, the Knight Relictor was faction locked later on, so that's a little tough to put into somebody else's list. But yeah, you'll see the Grand Hammer, the Grand Blade, like another list. But see how it does as a whole. I'm curious. All right. Eric Ochter, who has been at all of our Nova Open since the inauguration of the Warcry GT a couple years ago, he is bringing SCE Thunderstrike. This is really kind of like an order like soup a little bit, right? And really, it's SCE Thunderstrike because he wants to get that Annihilator with Grand Hammer in there, and he's got Kalitha Zandir in here. And so, but he's also added Haskell Hexbane, Bridget Axwald, Quiet Pock, and Amos Duncaro in there as well. So you've got some of the Order of Azir in here to give him some shooting power, as well as the heavy melee that are maybe a little bit slower. So I kind of like this. The way that he's paired this up, Haxel with the Annihilator and Bridget with the Annihilator. Like, you've got kind of like a tank that's walking in front of you and then be able to kind of shoot behind it. So Kalthea helps a lot with the movement. So hopefully you can get the Annihilators sort of to where they need to go. I know she's not in the same deployment group with them, but maybe she can kind of help out where they're needed a little bit more. So we'll see how well it does. I'm excited to see it. Okay, Martin Tremper has a Sylvaneth list, which we saw Sylvaneth 2 years ago, but we didn't have a Sylvaneth one last year. So this is very interesting. I think that this is actually very much a result of the battle trait with the Sylvaneth. And let me pull up that battle trait real quick. So for Sylvaneth, the battle trait is once per battle, a friendly fighter with this battle trait can use the Walk the Spirit pass ability without needing or spending any dice, and can use this ability as if they had the Warrior rune mark. Okay, so what does that mean, right? And I think a lot of you probably know what that means, but I want to tell you anyway. The Walk the Pass is really, really good. It's remove this fighter from the battlefield and set them up anywhere on the battlefield floor more than 5 inches from enemy fighters. So basically, they can teleport. Mostly, this is the druids, the Spite Revenants that can do. I'm sorry, it's the Spite Revenants or the Tree Revenants. I mix them up all the time, and I apologize. It is has the Warrior rune mark. So it is the Tree Revenant that can do it. Yeah, the Tree Revenant can do it. So, but what's great about this is it says you don't need the Warrior rune mark. So you could be teleporting your Kurnoth Huntmaster to where you need to go. Especially with the Scythe, that's really, really good. You've got or the Great Sword. So he's got Martin has Kurnoth Huntmaster with Kurnoth Scythe and +1 to toughness for him, plus the Tree Revenant and the dagger. Then he's got a Kurnoth Huntmaster with Great Bow, +1 strength on there, the Might Blessing, and he's got a Spite Revenant and Tree Revenant in there. And then he's got a Kurnoth Hunter with Kurnoth Greatsword and a Spite Revenant in there as well. So he's got 2 things that can automatically teleport in the Tree Revenants. And then the Kurnoth Hunters could probably use that once per battle ability to teleport as well. We have seen this come super duper in handy on the treasure missions. So if you're playing against Sylvaneth, you're going to want to try to get to that treasure quickly so they can't just grab it and then yeet themselves across the board to where nobody's at. And you're going to want to, like in the kill missions that we have or the objective missions, you're going to want to try to be careful about a Kurnoth teleporting right down your throat, right? So it's going to be hard. It's going to be interesting. I'm really excited to see how this does against a lot of the lists here, just because that teleport movement is pretty effective if you can use it right. So excited to see with it what we got. All right, next on the list is Alexander Archer with a Vulcan Flame Seekers. He has a Kindle Droth, Scalebreaker with Fire Steel Axe, Scalebreaker with Fire Steel Split Axe. In the dagger, in the hammer, he has a Droth Master, 2 Scalebreakers with Fire Steel Split Axes, and in the shield, he has a Vulcan Rune Father, Drothblood Thane, and a Scalebreaker with Fire Steel Split Axe. So this looks like to be a one box, pretty much Vulcan Flame Seekers. So they're a great little faction though, and their abilities put them as one of the better bespoke factions out there right now, in my opinion. Their movement may be a little tricky, but with their abilities, I think that they're doing okay. So they've got with the scale breakers, split axe. They're 3 attacks, strength 5, 2/4 damage. They're doing damage, and then you've also got, of course, you can't forget it, the ignite weapon, which is count 1 miss from the next attack as a critical hit instead. So you're just putting up damage. If they can get to where they need to go, they're going to do great. So we'll see how a one box list. I think if any of the one boxes do well, it's going to be the Vulcan Flame Seekers, just because they've got a lot of good stuff going for them. All right, Michael Glazer has a Vulcan Flame Seekers as well. So he has an Entrant Master with Entrant Harness, 2 Scale Breakers with Fire Steel Split Axes in the dagger. In the hammer, he has a Vulcan Rune Father with Mastercrafted Bokas. And then he has 2 Scale Breakers with Fire Steel Split Axe. And then in the shield, he has a Droth Master and then 2 Scale Breakers with Fire Steel Split Axe. Very similar list. The difference here is that he has an Entrant Master with an Entrant Harness. So he wants that extra little melee action and a little bit more movement to get him to where he needs to be. So again, I think there's a lot going for the Vulcan Flame Seekers. And then just adding that Entrant Master, he's got some serious melee and some, pretty good movement to get him to where he needs to be. So good luck to both Arthur and Michael Glazer. All right, our last player to round out the Sentinels of Order lists, we have Mike Sansom. He's got the Wildercore Hunters, and I've heard about this list as a nice shooty gun line here. So as his leader, he has the Wildercore Warden with double bitted axe and blessings of savagery, so +1 to crit damage. He's got a Rune Lord as an ally, and then he has a Trailblazer with twin crossbows and the dagger. In the hammer, he has the Soros Scar Veteran on Cold One, and with a blessing of might +1 strength. And then he has 2 Trailblazers with twin crossbows. And then a shield, he has 2 Trailblazers with twin crossbows and a Trailhound with blessings of fortitude. So he only has 1 doggo in the list, which, I guess that's okay just to have 1 doggo. We're really missing an opportunity, I think, to just have all the doggos. But, I get it. Look, he's got a lot of shooty that can shoot into melee combat, that can, really start chinking away at damage, etc. I do like the Soros Scar Veteran on the Cold One with the Blessing of Might. Let me pull up his stats because I think it's pretty good. Scar Veteran on Cold One. All right, so with the Blessings of Might, he's got 1 extra strength. So he's got 4 attacks, 5 strength, 2/4 damage. He moves 7, though. and he's 2-4 damage. He's doing pretty good there. Let's see. Let me just take one look at something here. Yeah, and he's got the Tearing Bite, which adds the value of this ability to damage points allocated by each hit and critical hit from the next melee attack action. So, I mean, adding the strength helps guarantee you get the hit, and then if you've got that triple that's like a 4 or 5 or something like that, all of a sudden you're doing some crazy damage. So I like him a lot as an ally. He gives you a little bit of mobility and a lot of melee that you kind of need in this list where you have a lot of shooting going on. And I'm assuming this sounds wrong, but I'm assuming that the dog that he has is kind of just to be a shield between bad guys and the two trailblazers as they're shooting elsewhere. So, very good. I'm excited to see this. Dan Herrera had told me that there's only one gun line. It's true that this is not a true gun line here, but I think it's as close as we're probably going to get in our current meta, since like the fight for profit was sort of nerfed. I think that this is what we see here. All right, that rounds out our Sentinel of Order lists. So we're gonna move on. Good luck to everybody in the Order faction. So we're moving on to Destruction. All right, we have returner Amber Gerhardt. Last year, Amber brought Daughters of Cain, and unfortunately, Daughters of Cain didn't work out very well. Like they're just a really hard faction. The points are, I think, a little off for Daughters of Cain, and they need sort of an update to their abilities. They're a lot like Night Haunt in the sense that they needed a little bit of an overhaul, which they ended up getting. Night Haunt did, and I think Daughters of Cain needs a little bit more of an overhaul too. Something to change their points a little bit, something to change their abilities a little bit, maybe make some things more universal that is only available to one or two models. But anyway, she won last year some prizes, and one of the things that she got was a box of Gloomspite Gits. And I think actually somebody had won it and they gave it to her because they had already had a bunch of Gloomspite Gits. And they're like, you probably need a new faction after the Daughters of Cain stuff. So she got this and she leaned into it. So I kind of like what she's got going on here. She's got a Bounder boss, Boggle Eye, stab it with Poke and Spear and Shield in the dagger. Then she's got a Rotgut Troggeth, a Brugit, and a stab it with Poke and Spear and Shield. And then, and that's in the hammer. And then in the shield, she has another Rotgut Troggeth, and then two Stabbers with Poke and Spear and Shields. So I like the double Rotgut Troggeth. They're very hard to kill, and two, they can do damage when they need to. So having the Brugit with the Troggeth in the hammer, I think that if you time it right and you get that combo working for you, that Rotgut Troggeth is going to be a lot of pain to deal with. And those Troggeths are really hard to remove. If somebody focuses on them, it's going to take them a couple of rounds to kill them probably, just because they got that regenerative ability that keeps them around for a lot longer than you would think it does. And so she needs to get those Rotgut Troggeths to where they need to be almost immediately to really be effective, and then have that Bounder boss go like as a heat-seeking missile to the threats that they have out there that might be that she needs to deal with. So I have a good feeling about Amber this year compared to last year. I think that she's going to do much better with this list. All right, so we're going to turn the next review over to Dan, and he's going to take a look at Rob Visconti's Iron Jaws.
I want to shout out is Rob Viscomi's Iron Jaws. Few things I like about this list. The first is the name. Don't make me get my dads. I think it's so funny. Everyone knows you don't mess with the kid who has two dads. Listen, it's fun. It's got two mega bosses. One of the things that was interesting about this one, I recently made a video about battle traits. One of the battle traits was Iron Jaws that I talked about. They have a really incredible one where if the opponent waits, you get to move with one of your fighters 3 inches, which is really nice. It eases the pressure on mega bosses because they have that giant base. that can be kind of hard to move with their 3-inch movement. But when your opponent can't really do certain types of shenanigans without allowing them to move again, that kind of eases the pressure off of them really nicely. One thing, the list I created in that video, it had a mega boss, a brute boss, a slightly bigger type of regular brute. And he said that that was actually the first list he tried too, that he kind of independently came to the same conclusion, tried it out. He said that he liked it a lot better than this one, but that it wasn't beating a lot of the like scary meta things, and that this list was actually just performing a little bit better. And the key is essentially just that mega bosses are more points efficient than not mega bosses. The brute boss is really cool, really fancy, but unless you're specifically winning the game off of its abilities, you will start to miss the just like lower output that it has. And then, also brute bosses can be killed, and mega bosses, taking down a mega boss is like ridiculously hard. And so if you have 2 of them, that's terrifying. I really like the way he set up the deployments here where, yes, one of the things I talk about in Rising Dread is that a key can be getting your hammer to contribute at some point. And that might be tough depending on how things shake out in the contested objectives. But he still got a mega boss, in your face early. The brute is not the worst place to have a savagery blessing, right? It's got 4 attacks natively, so it's going to roll some crits eventually over the course of the game. It's got 25 health, right? So they're not going to take it out. So you're going to get multiple rolls with it, and that's going to be just, you're going to pick up a few damage points out of that blessing. But then he's got the hammer coming on, kind of in your face in the other 2 missions as well. So that's where his other mega boss is. And so no matter what mission, he's going to have a mega boss front and center trying to kind of do all the heavy lifting there, which is a really nice place to be, and just like a really good use of deployments that I really like. I do think this is going to be really interesting. There's just a lot of killing power, and Ard boys with shields are going to be hard to kill back. I actually do kind of like having Ard boys with big choppas instead of shields next to a mega boss, so that the opponent can't use like a really cheap fighter to essentially net the mega boss by having just like taking its time away. But one thing when I look at the lists for this tournament is that there aren't people running a ton of swarms, a ton of tiny little fighters that can do that really well. There's not a lot of like 50, 55 point fighters out there at this tournament that can just like freeze a mega boss in place the entire game. So actually, in terms of like meta perspective, I actually don't think Rob's going to get punished for that really at all, which is just a really nice place to be. So I really like that. Maybe he's just been like looking around at what people are playing and seeing just like not a lot of chaff swarms, something like that, and deciding it that way. Because also those big choppas really cut through chaff when your opponent just has too many fighters for your mega bosses to deal with. But if Rob never has to fight a chaff swarm, I think he's going to be in a really great spot with this warband. And the trait is really nice against chaff swarms anyway, so sometimes you just have to be able to deal with the warbands that can actually beat Iron Jaws in a stand-up fight, things like ogres. And mega bosses are a really good start for that. So I like this list, and I wish Rob the best of luck.
All right, thank you, Dan. All right, so we have our second Iron Jaws list, which is Andrew Klimas. Andrew has an Auric Mega Boss, Brute with Gourd Choppa, and an Ard Boy with Choppa and Shield and his dagger. He has another Brute with a Boss Choppa, and 2 Auric Ard Boys with Choppa and Shield. And then in his shield, he has an Auric Ard Boy and Choppa and Shield. Look, for an Auric list, 8 models is pretty good. You've got 3 beefy things to put out there. A Mega Boss is no slouch, and then 2 brutes are great. Again, I like the you messing with the brutes, which helps capture objectives, and the Ard boys can do work out there too. My concern a lot of times with the Iron Jaws is that it is the Iron Jaws are a little slow, But I think with the blessings, we talked about how, without the blessings, or sorry, not blessings, without the battle trades this year, they would be really, they wouldn't be here. I don't think anybody would be playing Iron Jaws without the battle trades. And so the battle traits here, each time an enemy fighter makes a wait action, each player who's warband has this battle trait can pick one friendly fighter. That fighter makes a bonus move action up to 3 inches. So what's great about this is that it's kind of like an anti-horde mechanic, right? Where if I've got a whole bunch of like Luminous Realm Lord Wardens, for example, and I just want to use my action economy because I have more than my opposing player, I'm going to use a wait to try to get them a little bit closer so that I might be able to counter charge them or whatever. And the problem is now that if you wait, they can take a fighter, move them 3 inches, and then if they activate again, they can move another 3 inches. 6 inches for an Iron Jaws is kind of crazy. So it forces the Iron Jaws opponent to really think about how they want to play that action economy. Do they want to wait or do they just want to pass and then kind of end their turn and move on, right? So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see the differences between the two lists. With Rob and his amazing, I'll get my dad's list with the 2 mega bosses versus the 2 brutes and a mega boss, and how that might play out. So I'm very interested to see that. All right, Richie Fichera, Richie Witch. He is also Iron Jaws. He has an Auric Weird Knob Shaman, a brute with a pair of brute chappas. He's got a brute boss with boss chappa, Auric Ardboy with chappa and shield. And then he's got a Ghur Grunta with a Pig Iron Chappa, and then 2 Ardboys with Ardboy Chappas and shields. So Richie's got some stuff going on in here. The Ghur Grunta, I have used that before. It's really good about moving. I know that I lost a very key round to Peter. It was a very close round, and I lost it because he was able to net my Ghur Grunta before I could move it out and engage him with some other stuff. And really, that was the turning point of the match. And so I would just caution Richie the same thing. Don't get your Ghur Grunta next to anything that's got a net. Get it moving quickly. Get it up to where it needs to be. Do some damage and let it tank some stuff. I had a great little round with it where I ended up blocking because it has that big long oval base. I ended up blocking a whole way into an objective area, and everything had to either go around or fight me, and he was just tanking it because he's got it seems like a billion wounds. So it's pretty good. Good luck. All right, Wade, Schoonover. Wade was here last year. He played a little bit of Bone Splitters with us, and he's moved from Bone Splitters to Cruel Boys. So what's interesting is this is the most Ogre Cruel Boys list I've ever seen. I think I was thinking earlier that it was kind of crazy that there was no Ogre lists in here. I think that there's some Ogre lists to be had, but there wasn't any this year. But then I pulled up Wade's list, and sure enough, in the dagger. Oh, yawning here, guys. It's 1:53 a.m., so we're working through this. In the dagger, we have the Tyrant, from the Ogre list. And then we have Shank and Stabgrot. In the Hammer, we have Crusher and then 2 Stabgrots. And in the Shield, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. In the Shield, we have a Gut Ripper boss with Mace and Sword, and then 2 more Stabgrots. So he's really leaning into the super, cheap chaff while bringing some major heavy hitters, the Tyrant and Crusher. What's interesting about this is I know he's doing a Stabgrot list that gives you that cheap chaff, but I'm also thinking that there may be a lost opportunity here where you have a Gut Ripper that has their amazing reaction that lets you basically give a free action to a, friendly 3 inches away. And with the tyrant, who has a pretty good shooting and very amazing melee that you can, and 2 inch reach melee, and like 8 inch shot or something, a 9 inch shot, that's pretty decent. Like, why wouldn't you pair him with a Gut Ripper? I would really think about that. And yeah, I think that it'll be interesting. The stab grots, I mean, they're just kind of out there, so you're gonna have to use them as sort of speed bumps for other fighters. Basically, just kind of get them in the way, because they're not gonna do enough to get what you need there. So like they just don't have enough fighting power. Yeah, okay. Just see if there's anything else that. Yeah, okay. All right. Anyway, Wade, I think it's gonna be interesting. A Tyrant and Crusher's no, I mean, like it's got some oomph in there, and so I think that you're gonna get some stuff. And I do like Shank's. Um, I really do like Shank's net ability. So on a 2-up, that's insane. I mean, like I just talking about how the Ghur Grunta got caught in a net. So I think Shank will kind of do the work, and if the tyrant's close by, he can kind of protect them a little bit. So yeah, I like it. It'll be interesting to see. Okay, Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you to take a look at the Cruel Boys with Andrew Elliott's list.
So the first list I'm really excited about is from Kaler. He went to Cruel Boys, which is really exciting. We've got Herc and Shank, who are the two auto plays. You must play them, or else you're not playing Cruel Boys. I don't make the rules. Then we've got two Gut Rippas, just some good, wholesome, regular battle line. Then some kind of interesting little blessings choices here that I kind of like. +4 health on the Stab Grot. And then what I really like is +4 health on Shank. The Stab Grot, take it or leave it. I get it. You have 60 points left. What else are you going to do with them, right? But Shank is kind of cool here because Shank is so important to keep alive. Shank nets on a 2 instead of a 3, which is wild for netters. Shank is the new Prague, really. And so he's able to kind of stay alive a little bit longer and do a little bit more stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff with how that interacts with how the rest of the list works. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the Bolt Boy boss. Bolt Boy boss can be a really nice tool for Cruel Boys to have, having that kind of reach across the board. Cruel Boys are not slow, but they're not fast either. And so having that reach is important. But what I love is where Kaler has put the Bolt Boy boss. If you look at the 3 maps for the first 3 missions of the pack, all 3 of them have a place where a fighter in your shield can hang out, where your opponent's not really incentivized to come after them. Rising Dread, the shield starts kind of in this corner. You can have a couple fighters move up to this contested objective, and you can kind of sit your shield, or like one fighter from your shield, on the back objective. And then just like pew pew at both of the 2 contested objectives. Rising Dread, I think, is defined by the battle over these 2 center objectives, and then later the second battle over the treasure. But it's really important to claim the center. One thing that's also really important is to be able to kind of have your hammer actually be able to affect the board. And also making sure that your dagger can take one of the contested objectives right when it comes on. And of course, this clawback is going to be great for that. But going back to the Bolt Boy boss, so it can kind of sit here, and the opponent wants to run it down, but it's just really hard to take their far objective from them because of the way their hammer comes in reinforcing it round 2. It's just so hard to do. And so your opponent is heavily disincentivized to do it, which means your Bolt Boy boss can just kind of be shooting the entire game, which is exactly how you want it. Then Pillager's Loot is here. Your Bolt Boy boss is here in the shield. It is able to maybe shoot down their dagger. This is going to be a little bit taller order, but at least the place where you really don't want your Bolt Boy boss is like in your dagger where they are coming after you and Bolt Boy boss has to actually like fight and defend itself. You never want that, right? And so being in the deployment where you are trying to shoot them, where you're trying to chase them down, it's kind of their treasures to lose, is a really nice place to have it. And, Pillager's Loot is essentially like it can come down to winning 2 out of 3 fights. I like Pillager's Loot compared to Loot and Pillage, where it just incentivizes you to get a little bit risky, but the Bolt Boy boss is even kind of good in that situation because you can shoot a treasure carrier who has ran away. Finally, Lightning Raid. This can be a really tough one for your shield because your shield comes down in round 2 in the corner. A lot of the time, it just won't participate in the game. Bolt Boy boss, though, can just kind of move once and then be able to shoot both of these 2 very important objectives in the center. It can shoot both the middle and the side one while counting for the kind of safe home objective. And again, your opponent is like not really incentivized to try to run all the way down here to kind of get through gut rippas and everything. And by then your hammer will have been like creating a fight in the center. Your opponent's just not going to have a good time if they try to do that. And so that's a great place to hide your Bolt Boy boss. It's just, I just love the placement there, and it's really cool that he was able to find a map where that works out. I hope that works out for him. I hope that his opponents don't kind of have a whole bunch of Mizzen Masters and Achillean Kings and things that can kind of take down the Bolt Boy boss without needing to work very hard. That would be too bad, but I don't think there's a ton of those in this tournament, so he should be okay. Finally, for the more punchy pieces in Cruel Boys that are kind of necessary to make the faction work, you always need a punchy ally to make it work. He's got 2. The Savage Clawback is kind of fast with 5-inch move, and it has that charge ability, which is really nice. And then the Ferocious Brute Boss with Choppa, with +1 attack here to make it just very, very fighty. A fighter who can either be kind of a wizard or a real brawler, depending on how you use your dice with him. He's very dice hungry, but as long as you kind of are using those dice, he can be really great. So this list has just a ton of different ways to use abilities, and it has fighting power and a little bit of, endurance stuff with the gut rippas, and then of course, hopefully, we'll be able to keep Bolt Boy boss safe enough so that it's actually good. I really hope this list works out. I really like how it's designed, and I'm really hoping that he wins a lot because I think this is like a really spicy way to read the pack, which I think is really cool. If you were gonna tell me to bring Cruel Boys with no Gut Lord, I would really hope that I would come up with a list like this. I don't think I would have. I think this is really cool.
All right, thank you, Dan. We are moving on to Death List. I'm going to take one, and Dan's going to take the other. I'm going to look at Philip Hall. Soulblight Gravelord. He has a White King on Skeletal Steed, and then a skeleton with Ancient Spear as his dagger. And then he has Prince Duval and Gorath the Enforcer. And as his shield, he has an Askergan Exemplar and Vikaros Bloodborne. So, 6 models, but he's got some heavy hitters in here. And this is very much an elite war band. So he's going to have to move and be able to wade through some chaff that's out there as we take a look at it. So, I like it. I think I'm a little concerned about the White King on the Skeletal Steed. It's got some. Let me pull up his things, because if I remember correctly, he's got a lot of movement. But I don't know that his fight ability is there. All right, so he's got a 2-inch reach, 4 attacks, strength 5, 2/5 damage, 8-inch move, and his ability allows him to Add half the value of this ability to damage points allocated by each critical hit from melee attack actions. So I know it's a double, and it you can get like the extra things to your critical hit. There's some abilities out there that are like, add the value of this to the hits and critical hits, and this is just half of it to the critical hits. And so, if you're taking it for this ability, I don't know that it's the greatest. What I'm assuming is that you took this for the movement and the 28 wounds he has, and the fact that he's got strength 5, right? So that he'll be out there doing damage. And Prince Duval, like he's a fan favorite out there right now. He's four attacks, strength 4, 2/6 damage, with 26 wounds. He's got a movement of 5, which is really, really good. And his ability allows you to allows you to add 2 to the attack's strength characteristic of that attack action if there's any damage to it. So I mean, he can really like stack up the damage right there. So I like him as there. Again, kind of an elite warband, so gonna have to pay attention to missions like the treasure missions, missions like the objective missions, and really just kind of carve your way through their fighters as quickly as you can. All right. I think I might have yeah, okay. So actually I'm gonna review Kyle's Soulblight Gravelords. I thought Dan was gonna do it, but he reviewed another one instead, which is a-okay. So in the dagger you have Ione, Bolt, Vlash, and Coil. And the hammer you have Dentalos the Exile, Thane, fourth and last, Helmar the Hewer. And then the shield, you have Prince Duval, Necromancer, and Regulus. So really, Kyle is bringing basically all Blade Guards except for the Necromancer. So, especially like Coil, Ione, Bolt, Flash, like those are all basically better zombies than the zombies themselves. And zombies are pretty good too, So they're just... they are 10 more points, but like they've got, let's see, 3, 3, 10, 3, 3, 10. They have a better strength, better damage on some of them. Hold on. Am I getting this right? Yeah, Vlash and Coil. Yeah, they got a little bit more movement on them. They got more attacks, a little bit more. I guess the damage is about the same. So they've got more going for them. They're just a couple points more than your regular zombie, but they come with a lot more oomph there. And then you've got Helmar the Hewer, Thane, fourth and last to give a little bit more as well. And of course, we just talked about Prince Duval. So I'm really interested to see how Kyle navigates this. Kyle's a very heavy control player, and I think that that's going to be coming into play with some of this stuff. And with Prince Duval and the Necromancer, I believe you can resurrect, and that'll be interesting to see how he plays that. So good luck to our 2 Deathless. May you represent your alliance well, and that your dreams of conquering the world come to fruition. That is all that we have on the list today. I hope you enjoyed it. The lists are open. Anybody can go look at the factions the tournament participants and the rosters for each tournament participant, because it is locked and we are not accepting submissions now. So excited to see how this goes, and we'll go from there. So thank you, everybody. Hope you have a good night. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm sorry it seems a little hasty. We kind of threw it together last minute. But here we are. So We'll see you in approximately, 36 hours. Looking forward to it. Less than 36. So looking forward to seeing y'all. All right. Have a good night. We'll see you on the other side.